Hi, everybody. First, let me introduce myself. I am Derek Maines, AKA the Process Fixer. It's a nickname I've had for about 20 years, and it comes from my background in primarily working with investors and organizations to help streamline process. I wanted to create this video for you to show you a little bit about what I am working on and why I'm really excited to talk to you about potentially being a facilitator for the methodology called process triage. Process triage is a methodology that was created more than 30 years ago, and it was designed in the telecom industry in order to streamline process, build capacity. And its first year in deployment in the company where it was created, it saved them over $200 million in bottom line costs, not through cutting employees, but by asking the employees where challenges were in the organization, where bottlenecks were, and fixing those things. So we've recently acquired this company as of January 2024. We're really excited to roll it out with a facilitator model. I am a firm believer that facilitators are really the front line, and they are going to be the ones that are going to help us truly deliver this protocol into the marketplace. My personal mantra as an individual for years has been to rescue work. What am I rescuing work from? From busy work, from mundane tasks, from things that just really don't matter. I grew up in a very blue collar family. My father, when I was growing up, was a school bus driver. My mom worked part-time in retail, and I saw the challenges that they had with working for organizations that didn't listen to the employees. I always wanted to solve that problem. And throughout my entrepreneurial career, I have done so through the creation of software platforms, communication methodologies, and ways to help employees communicate with executives about the things that are happening in their world and in their purview. I'm excited today to show you process triage because it is unlike anything I have ever seen before in its ability to very rapidly, in a one-day workshop, completely and totally revolutionize the way the organization thinks about its process, the way it thinks about its people, and the way that it solves problems. So let me share with you a little bit of a presentation here, and I'll just sort of talk you through it. I've always been a huge fan of Edward Deming. He created Six Sigma and Lean and was very influential in the creation of the Toyota production system. Deming was a firm believer that people could never be the problem, that problems always stemmed from bad process or bad systems that management had implemented incorrectly. I believe that firmly to this day. And I think when we as leaders take the opinion and take the approach that our people can't screw up, and that if we just worked on improving our systems, that we would have much better organizations that would be a lot more profitable, a lot more fun to work for. I'm going to show you a second Deming quote here because it's one of my favorites, where Deming said, look, 85% of the reasons, by the way, Deming created the U.S. Department of Statistics and Labor. So he is the foremost statistician probably in the world in the last 100 years. And he said 85% of the reason for failure and problems in organizations is system. These are not worker problems. These are problems with the system. If you want to improve performance of an organization, you must work on the system. That's what we're going to talk about today. I'm a firm believer. I've said this for more than a decade. System only comes from two sources. It either comes from evolution and mutation, or it comes through intelligent design. Almost all organizations have allowed their process to form in this sort of void of mutation and evolution. It just became because that was a way to get things done. We need to have an intelligent design approach. We need to be looking at our systems. We need to be auditing our processes. We need to be working hand in hand with the people on the front line doing those things and asking them to try to help us improve them. So the challenge that most executives have is that we understand the inputs of an organization, we understand the outputs of the organization, and some of us understand the impact of the work that we do and the outcomes for our customers. But almost without exception, leaders are completely blind to how the sausage is made. What happens after we get an order or we get a proposal or we get a grant? And the end of the day, when we look at the balance sheet and we say, oh, we've got some profit in there, where did it all go in the in-between? Almost no executive knows this. Many years ago, I did some consulting for some Fortune 10 companies. And one of the things that blew me away was their ability to know their cost of labor per second. They measured things by the amount of seconds it took to do them because they understand that by removing bottlenecks from people in the process, they could speed things up. They could make the organization more profitable. And listen, they could get rid of a lot of that busy work that people were doing. Documents tell us why. Financials tell us what. Maps tell us how and where. Interestingly, in human history, cuneiform tablets were the first form of mobile writing that could be transferred over. It was very expensive at the time to do it, and most of it was done by merchants. The interesting thing is when you look at cuneiform tablets that we have in the archaeological record, they only fall into really one of two categories: maps and SOPs. The things that created our civilization were mapping things out and creating standard operating procedures, communicating those messages to the next generation. We don't have a lot of that in our businesses. We don't have a lot of maps. Rarely do I walk into a company and I can look at a wall and see exactly what's happening throughout the whole organization. So what is process triage? Process triage is a mapping technique that was created in the early 90s at one of the largest telecom companies in the US. And this was the methodology that they used to get purview, to get vision, to understand everything that was happening inside the company. It is based on a couple of different things, but first let me talk about this. The interesting takeaway from doing workshops where you build these maps is that many times you will hear this word uttered: this is $1 million day. This is $1 million day. We have found $1 million in bottom line savings or improvement through just having some of our people come together for one day and do a workshop with process triage. The workshop is led by the people. We facilitate it, but the people are the ones that build their process. This is some maps that have been built over the years. You can see you got a whole team up there working together, trying to figure out step by step what happens inside the process. The methodology is called action results mapping. We're not doing the mapping of work instructions of every single detail. What we're looking at is the lines being the work, the circles being completed segments of work. You can think about these maps, like I just showed you here, as essentially a list of to-dos. What all are the things that have to be done in order to get from the origin of the process to the destination. Now that could be lead to cash. It could be from the time we get a submission on our website until the time that we send a proposal. Whatever that process is can all be mapped out in this methodology. So let me show you some examples here. This is what I was talking about. You can see over here, this is the work being done. This is the completed segment of work being done, completed segment of work. We as facilitators are walking with the employees, helping them understand the methodology, keeping them on track. Over the course of the day, it takes about 3 to 4 hours for them to build this big, long map up on the wall. Then when we take a little bit of a break over lunch, what we as facilitators do, we go back through, we change some of the conventions. Reds are the completion of a process and the trigger of something new. Greens are triggers. Blues are externalities. We bring together that sort of the standard, and we apply that to the board. We also put these numbers in. These numbers are very important because they technically are like GPS locations of where work is occurring inside the company. That's important because it allows us to speak in a language inside the company where I say, you know what, we're having a lot of issues in the 1030s, 1030, 1035. There's some challenges here. And everybody in the organization can refer to that place in the process. They know what we're talking about. We've seen organizations actually even taking these numbers and assigning them as part of somebody's responsibilities or accountabilities, putting them in their job descriptions. You're responsible for 1030 to 1040. So anytime a problem happens in there, anytime there's a question about that, you're going to be our resident expert because you're the one that's in charge of those. Sorry, of course, I'm shooting this while the landscaper shows up in the background. I hope that's not too problematic. So that's what the maps look like at the end of the day. We work through this workshop. We get the process up. And after lunch, we do something a little bit different. We'll talk about that in a moment. We talk about pain here, but this is the end result that the client looks at the end of the day. Now, next thing we do, once we've got this map up on the wall, we start to talk to employees about pain. Here's the interesting thing about pain. Our goal in this next step is to extract from them where things are broken. Now, this isn't a blame game. This isn't Susan did it or Joe did it or I don't have enough resources. That's not the intent of this exercise. The intent of the exercise is to have the employees show us and tell us what is broken. Quantifiably measurable things that are broken. 60% of the time, I don't get the paperwork on time. 25% of the time, the internet is too slow to upload the documents. Whatever those things are, simple little solutions, simple little problems that they deal with on a daily basis that slow them down and create bottlenecks. Now, the interesting thing is this: at the end of the day, after we've got all this pain and we triage the pain, and I'll show you that part next. The interesting thing is that the leaders struggle many times with the results, because they, as executives and leaders, are used to dealing with issues of brand and balance sheet, business models, compliance, legal. They think problems are big things that require lots of money to fix. They don't. The problems that are happening at the front line of the organization, us bringing in that frontline employee to help us with this workshop, their problems are broken things. Their problems are errors. Their problems are not having the right tools. Their problems are procedures that haven't been properly outlined. And many times when executives see this, they're a little shocked because they think the problem should be larger, and they're shocked that the problems are as easy to fix as they are. I can tell you time and time again in doing this workshop that immediately after the workshop, when I read in the executive sends an email or a text message and solves one of the top 5 issues inside the company via text message, because it's that simple to fix. So what is pain? Again, it cannot be a resource constraint. It can't be a person. We're talking about 25% of the time we're missing these items. 40% of the time we have to rework something. The ball, not the player. We're not focused on blaming people. Again, going back to the beginning with Edward Deming, humans don't make mistakes. Mistakes are a result of a system or process that's been implemented incorrectly. Let's fix broken stuff. So you can see here, what happens is we bring everybody back from lunch. We've worked on the board a little bit. We're talking through things with them. We start to explain this concept of pain. Then we ask them to take pink stickies, write down where they experience pain quantifiably. 60% of the time, I don't get the right paperwork that I need, and I have to go back and chase it down, and I have to do these kind of things. They write those things down on these little pink sticky notes. And then all at the same time, simultaneously, they all approach the board at the front of the room, all place their pain at the same time. This develops a real incredible sense of empathy, because now you're standing shoulder to shoulder with potentially the people that cause you pain or the people that you cause pain. You get a chance to sort of see that and work it out. We let them hash out those things that are up on the board. I think it's 60% of the time. You think it's 80% of the time. Can we agree that it's 70%? They're working through this together. We're facilitating that throughout the entire process. They're putting that pain up there. And then interestingly enough, here on the right, here's a really great example. $20 billion company. All of this pain on the left, all these little pink stickies, all of them are around the pass off between sales to operations. Makes sense. And what's the number one thing? You'll see these little numbers here. This is at the end of the day. They rank these things and they triage them, which I'll explain in a few moments. The number one thing in a $20 billion company that the employees say will someday sink us is salespeople do not show up for the handoff meeting 80% of the time. That's one of the easiest solutions on the planet. As an executive, I make it mandatory that the salespeople show up for that meeting, and I change the KPI where maybe they used to get commissioned on the signature from the client. Now they get the sign off from operations when operations says all the proper paperwork has been submitted and everything's been passed off. So in the end, what you end up with is there's only 4 improvement solutions. Every one of these pieces of pain, as we work these out, we're going to take them through the triage methodology. Every one of them will be solved through 1 of 4 things: analyze, design, train, or enforce. It's either a process design problem or it's an operating system problem. Okay, so let's talk about the pain process. Let's get into this a little bit more, and I'll show you how this works. We use a methodology called process triage that was created over 30 years ago by the team that created this organization. Triage is the French word for sorting. And like medical triage, where in an emergency situation, you've got to determine, is this a life-threatening injury? Is this, did this person have an hour or more? Are they walking wounded? We use the same sort of protocol. And it works a little bit like this. We are going to go ahead and we're going to walk them through this methodology to analyze what's happening with that problem and to come up with a solution. Here's the cool thing. In 31 years, 500,000 pain proposals have been submitted by employees through this process. Every single one of them has been answered with one of four things: analyze, design, train, or enforce. And I'm going to show you how this works. So let's just go back to that map that I showed you. The number one problem in the organization was salespeople are not showing up for the handoff meeting. So the first question we will ask is this: triage methodology. Does this inhibit our capability as an organization? Yeah, it does. If it doesn't, it's not part of this. We can move it aside. It's not recognized at this moment. So yes, we do. Do we know the most likely cause? If we don't, then we have to spool up a little project to analyze this process. We've got to figure that out. If we do we know the most likely cause? Yes, we do. Do we have an existing best practice? No, we don't. Then we need to design a capability, a method, a tool, some instruction, an LMS training in order to do that. If we do have an existing best practice, has everyone in the organization been trained on it? Not just, we sent an email out 2 years ago. I just had this happen with a client. The number one thing on their list was that people said, we've never been trained on this process. We reached out to the software company that they use, and they said, well, we did training in 2022. None of the employees that are working that process were there in 2022. So we need some training. And then finally, if everybody's been trained and we have a best practice and we know the most likely cause, then we just need to go through the enforcement process. We need to make sure that people are actually doing the things that they should be doing. From that, then the last question that we ask the employee, and we do this for each of their pain points, there's usually 20 to 30 of them, is this something that can be handled really easily? Is this literally an email to send out? Can it be done in the next couple of days? Is it a big, complicated thing? We want to understand how, what the impact of this is, the level of effort is, not the impact, and my apologies. We want to understand how hard it's going to be to fix this problem. At the end of the day, we hand back off to the executives a list of all of those proposals that employees have said are challenges in the organization, with the proposed solution that they believe will solve that problem. And then finally, the thing that we ask them to do, which can be really difficult in the last hour or so: rank them. If I can only get you one, what's it going to be? If I can only get you two, what's it going to be? If I can only get you three. We recently had a company that came in hundreds of millions of dollars in revenue. At the end of the day, I told the employees, look, I might not be able to get you all of these, but what if I could get you 5? And they said, oh, we could easily do 20% more business, which is $100 million. We could easily do 20% more business with the same amount of people if you could just get us those top 5 solved. None of them were big things. They were enforce a policy, get a system to work correctly, get us the proper tool to handle this situation. These are easy, simple solutions that are coming from the frontline employees. And they really do matter in the end. Here's an example. You can see we then, on our end, after you've done the workshop and facilitated the workshop, at the end, you use our app to take a bunch of pictures of everything, of all the stickies on the wall. And we've got these full-size sort of 4x6 sticky notes that go up, and they're all designed with all the methodology on them. We take pictures of that at the end of the day. Then my process mapping team takes over. They develop all the assets on the back end. There's a workbook that you send to us. We take all that. We map all these numbers out. What was the number 1 problem, the number 2 problem, and we map them all out on the map so that you can see where that is. This is what we would call a dumpster fire. You can see lots of pain points all around this attempted parts fabrication. And everybody in the organization is like, this thing is, look at this. 4 of the top 5 items on here are all around that one part of the process. That'd be really good to know as an organization, because it's something that you can work on to fix. The interesting thing with this methodology of the process mapping, working through issue processing, having an issue processing methodology, it works with any of the operating systems that are out there. If you're working with clients that are in that probably under a couple of $1 billion range, they've probably read the book Traction, or they like Vern Harnish's Scaling Up, or Gazelle's their coaching method, or Great Game of Business, or eMyth. All of them have these branded operating systems on how to do things inside the company. This fits in perfect with all of them. It does so for a very specific reason, and I'll get into that for just a second. If you have an operating system like EOS teaches you how to train and enforce things. It teaches you how to create meeting structure. It teaches you how to set KPIs and goals and do all those kind of things. It's very, very good at the train and enforce piece. It does nothing to tell you how to analyze problems, how to do root cause analysis, how to do issue processing, how to design policies and procedures, how to figure out how to design solutions to problems. It doesn't do those things. So this fits in very well with companies that like those type of methodologies, because this sits on top of it and it helps them understand what needs to be trained and enforced inside the company. So If you want to talk about, we can talk about for a moment where this works inside organizations. We have seen organizations, many times they'll come to us and say, we're not sure where to start. I might do a lead to cash process there. I just want to get high level, understand this, maybe get one or two people from 5 or 6 departments and get sort of a map together. But the reality is this can be drilled down indefinitely. We have an organization right now that's identified 18 core processes that they want to map out in the next 12 months. So it could be your sales, it could be your marketing, it could be delivery, it could be your service, or your manufacturing, procurement, whatever that is. Each and every one of those could go through this process. Now, here's the cool thing about the repetitiveness of this business. We suggest that process be audited like financials. And every 18 to 24 months, you revisit that process. You do this again. Why? Because if you did go through and solve your top 5 or 10 things on that list, well, there's going to be new priorities next time. There's going to be new bottlenecks, new challenges, new people, new systems. Listen, if you mapped out a core system 18 months ago, with the addition of AI, it's a totally different game today. So this is a repetitive process. And we have seen organizations 10 years running every year come back and revisit all these processes and have somebody come in and workshop these with them because they're getting the value. It's an incredible way to improve value, to decrease the amount of time it takes to do the work, to increase the quality of the work. And listen, let me tell you what we have seen so far. When you empower the people on the front line of your organization to allow their voice to be heard by executives, they take that very seriously. We have had workshop attendees confide in us that after 20 years with their company, they had planned on giving their 2-week notice the next day, and they changed their mind after going through the workshop. We have seen people cry at the workshop. Recently had a lady of 25 years worked someplace bawling, went into the hallway, emotionally overwhelmed because for the first time ever, her voice had been heard inside the company. She'd been complaining about something for years that she knew was stopping the company from being profitable. Nobody listened to her. This is an incredible way to connect the dots between the front line and the senior leadership of the organization. This isn't a game of telephone where it gets passed up and the only stuff that makes it to the top of the organization are the things that middle management or senior management thinks are important. No, this is hearing from your employees right at the front end. Let me tell you the other thing that happens when you do these workshops. Your customer experience radically improves because you break all the bottlenecks where employees are struggling with working to manage things for customers. When the employees are in a better mindset, when the employees don't have the level of stress, when they're not pressure prompted all the time, the customer experience improves. The customer feels that, and the customer feels like these guys have their stuff together. So you can really go through lots of different ways. You can look at sales and marketing and delivery and fulfillment and service. There's lots of different ways that you can map these things out. There is a perpetual cycle here. We have found that organizations that get hooked on this stay hooked because this is about driving their profitability, making them more, really improving the bottom line of the company, but also increasing that level of empathy and culture inside the company. So let me just take a couple minutes. I'll tell you a little bit about me. I've been a process consultant for over 25 years. I've consulted with everybody from Fortune 5 on through garage tech startups. I have a real passion for people. I grew up very blue collar. My dad was a school bus driver when I was a young boy. My mom worked part-time retail. I heard from them. I know that they struggled in life, and I know that there's a lot of people out there that are at the front lines of companies that aren't heard. And I think this methodology can really help. We need facilitators. I've got about 185,000 monthly listeners to my podcast and YouTube channel. I'm an active Vistage speaker. I've got about 30 dates this year coming up. We have leads coming through our website every day for people to come out and facilitate. I'm just one guy. I can't do it. I've recently certified about a dozen people. I've got about 40 more in the queue to get certified here over the next couple of months. I believe there's an opportunity here that it will be really beneficial to everybody that's listening to this because it's so powerful to the companies that we're working with. We've not had anybody balk about price on the way that we price our workshops. People, it's $1 million day. It's pretty awesome what you can do. So love to have you join us as a facilitator. I'm a big fan of Scott. I know the amazing work that he does. I know the amazing work that the people around him do. And I think this is something that brings it all together. It brings empathy, it brings compassion, it brings customer experience. It helps build culture inside the organizations while simultaneously saving the company money and solving issues that have been there for a long time. Again, I'm Derek Maines, the Process Fixer. Thanks so much for listening, and I sure hope you sign up to become a certified facilitator with us here.